The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The Auburn Tigers are dancing to the Final Four.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers.
The Auburn Tigers, they're still dancing. They have danced into the Final Four after a dramatic 70-64 win over the Michigan State Spartans. And we'll talk about individual performances and then a specific moment that blew me away. But this is a program-changing win, in my opinion, because up until yesterday, what happened in 2019, I think, was labeled as a fluke, or you just got hot at the right time, because since then, you haven't been able to survive the first weekend in the NCAA tournament. I think now having a head coach, your active head coach, has been to 2 Final Fours with the program he's currently with in a span of 6 years. 5 tournaments because the COVID year didn't, why should we even count that? I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's not many programs in college basketball that can wave this flag that Auburn is now able to have.
I think the biggest thing for me is you can go back in front of Alabama, right? Because the argument, to your point, it was, you did it one time, right? And it kind of felt like a fluke. Or somebody could make the argument it was a fluke. You don't accidentally luck into 2 Final Fours across 5 tournaments, 19.
5 tournaments, 6 years.
Yeah, 5 tournaments, 6 years. Yeah, because no 2020. Yeah, so it's at the point now where you can argue it can't be a fluke, or else you fluked into it twice. And it's obvious, given the dominance Auburn had all season, it's impossible to argue that this was a fluke, just given the fact that they are the number 1 overall seed and they've been the best team in the country for just about the entire season in the rankings.
Yeah, and they've had the best resume for the entire season because they played Houston for their second game and they went to Maui, not too long after that. And ever since then, they've just been racking up impressive win, competitive win after impressive and competitive win. And what they've done in the tournament, I think, is impressive in a different way. Not that, Creighton or Alabama State or Michigan State are these elite teams. I mean, I said Michigan State was the worst 2 seed in the draw. And I think over the course of the weekend, that might have proved that. I don't know. Doesn't matter. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of these games flowed in different ways. And I think when you talk about the best team at something, obviously we're talking about college basketball, but I think if you say this for college football or college baseball, the best team can win no matter what the flow of the game is. And Auburn proved that yet again this weekend, because they were similar to some extent, but I just think the way Michigan State and Michigan play are different. But obviously the way Creighton plays is extremely different. The way Alabama State plays is different. So you talk about the best college football team. Well, they can beat you 7-3, or they can beat you 42-35. Or the best baseball teams, they can win 1-0 in a pitcher's duel, or if it's fireworks, they'll beat you 7-9 with a 6-run frenzy in the 6th or something. That's what Auburn can do. And I'm not saying Florida can't do that. I'm not saying Duke and Houston can't do that either. I'm just saying, you said, you agreed with me. This isn't luck. Auburn deserves to be a Final Four team because they have been the best team in college basketball for the vast majority of the season.
Yeah, and I know we're going to get into it. I have questions about how Bruce is supposed to navigate the Final Four weekend in San Antonio while he's also fulfilling his duties as governor of Michigan. But this feels like the team that, for you to beat this team, you either have to have the games of your program's life, or Auburn has to beat themselves. First half against Michigan versus second half of Michigan, it felt like 2 different teams.
Yeah.
right? The first half against Michigan State versus that time period when Johni Broome was not in the game in the second half, it felt kind of like different teams.
Yeah, I felt like they were holding on at that point. Right?
Like they were just trying to survive, right? And then when Johni Broome came in, it was just, we'll get to that.
We'll talk about that in a second for sure.
Yeah, but this more so than any other team that I can kind of remember, this feels like you can't beat us if we don't let you beat us, right? Like for you to get a victory over us, there's a part we have to play because we have to have a disappointing day. We have to do things wrong. We have to get our own way because when this team is locked in, which is not all the time, but when this team is focused, healthy, locked in, they can beat anybody. I mean,
I think that caveat is done. I don't think we shouldn't be able to that shouldn't matter anymore. If you're not locked in now, what are you doing?
You're never going to be.
I think what we saw against Creighton for the entire game from an effort standpoint, not an execution standpoint, but from an effort standpoint, this team felt back. And then obviously the second half against Michigan and the first half against Michigan State, it felt like January and February Auburn. Yeah. Not only from an effort standpoint, but an execution standpoint. And I think we saw a full game's worth of effort with this team. Like it never felt like they took a possession off. It did feel like that. It did feel like that for a few against Michigan and several against Alabama State.
Yeah, and I think in retrospect, how much of that is just execution, as in the other team did something different that we weren't expecting, and so it threw us off until we figured out how to adjust, versus, to your point, in the tournament, the effort's been there. They learned from some of those losses in season, the very few. They learned from the Yale upset last year. Like the effort has to be there. The effort's been there the entire time. It's the execution. And I do think some of that, especially when you think about like the first half against Michigan. Okay, Michigan did some stuff that they weren't expecting. Michigan had a different kind of, not game plan, but a different physical threat than Auburn's faced in a while. Like it would make sense.
I mean, not many teams have 2 7-footers that they use that way. It's going to present different challenges for sure.
Yeah, but to your point, the effort's always been there. And as long as Auburn can execute enough, this is a national championship caliber team. Like you can't get to the Final Four without being that, but this is the prohibitive favorite to win the national title when they're locked in and executing. And I feel like they're going to be locked in and executing in San Antonio.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. You can also check out daily Major League Baseball lines all season long. The LA Angels travel to our nation's heartland to face the St. Louis Cardinals. The Cardinals have not lost yet, but have Miles Michaelis on the mound. Michaelis struggled mightily last year. The Angels feel like an interesting underdog pick, plus 112. So visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoop action all tournament long.
The Florida Gators are headed to the Final Four.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators.
Florida's playing pretty well, honestly. I wasn't stressing about most of it until there was that little rough stretch where Texas Tech just started hammering the paint and Florida couldn't do anything offensively. But up until that moment, it was very even keel, I think I'll say about that. That was just holy. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I don't even know how to really talk about this one because, oh my God. Pleasure Palace said, how much did you win betting on the Final Four? Let me pull it up for you. I'll get the exact numbers for you. Cause I was like, oh, I'll put $15 on it. And then I was like, you know what? I've got some like spare change in there. So I'll throw that in there. But I bet for Florida to make the Final Four, basically $17 to win $271. $271 on it. So there's that. I got plus 1,500 odds, and son of a That game is nuts. I'm juiced. I don't know what but oh my, Jadarius, you said Thomas Houck, and I'm going to give credit to our Locked On Mizzou host, John Miller, because he wanted to throw out the Houck Tour, the Final Four, baby. That's what the Florida Gators are doing. That's what the Florida Gators are doing. They're Houck Tour, the Final Four, with an incredible win. Thomas Houck, 20 points, 11 rebounds, 6 of 11 shooting. Walter Clayton Jr., 30 points. Oh my goodness, the Florida Gators are going to the Final Four for the first time since 2014. And my God, it feels good to be back. It feels good to be back. We don't know who they're playing yet, but here's the thing. The Florida Gators are the elite of the elite. And we know that because they got through the Elite Eight to the Final Four. They're here. They're here. They're going. A 16-2 run late in the game for the Florida Gators to take the lead, win the game by 5. My God, what a game. My God, what a game that was. The Florida Gators are back, baby. And also, like, this is the thing that I wanted to talk about, or this is the thing that I will talk about. We have often talked about how the Florida Gators are a team that you can never count out, right? We have often talked about how this is a team that frustrate the absolute living you-know-what out of you. But oh my God, this was a team that made adjustments. They adapted. They got better. And here's the thing as well. Walter Clayton Jr., I give you your props. Everybody, I don't care if you want to throw an emoji in the chat. I don't care if you want to just give him props, but I want everybody here to give Walter Clayton Jr. his props and Thomas Houck his props. Okay? And Walter Clayton Jr. finished with 30 points after a relatively quiet first half, right? Relatively quiet first half offensively. But Walter Clayton Jr. played what was the best defensive game he's ever played at the University of Florida. And I've been very critical of him. Phoenix, I can't let the expletives fly, but my God, I want to. We let out a B word. I don't know if I'm allowed to do that, but we did it anyway. But Walter Clayton Jr. played the best defensive game he's played at the University of Florida. I'm not going to talk about Iona. But I've been very critical of Walt for his defense and his turnovers. Okay? In the biggest game of the year, the biggest game of Walter Clayton Jr.'s career, he had 1 turnover, shot 50% from the field, shot 13 for 14 from the free throw line, played the best defense of his life, and helped lead this team to a 5-point win to go to the Final Four. Walter Clayton Jr., you are a legend. I love you. I die for you. And like I've been saying, that video or the TikTok, whatever it is, of Ashton Hall dunking his face in the ice water, that is not ice water. That is Walter Clayton Jr.'s blood, because my God, he's got ice in the veins. Thomas Houck, incredible performance. 4 for 6 from 3. Can we talk about that for just a second? That Thomas Houck, in the biggest game of his life, shot 4 for 6 from 3. Okay? 4 for 6 from 3. He had never, ever made 4 threes in a game. He is arguably the worst three-point shooter of the non-Ruben Chinyelu, Micah Hanlogtons. Shoots 33%. And he shot 4 for 6 from 3, including clutch threes to help close this one and close the gap and win the game. The Florida Gators are Final Four bound for one reason and one reason only, because they are the best damn team in the country. That's why. That's what it is. Should we do it again? Should we do it again? Okay, we'll do it again. The Florida Gators, led by the coldest mother trucker on the planet, Walter Clayton Jr. The Florida Gators, led by a guy that's been very frustrating recently in Alex Condon. The Florida Gators, led by the most brolic transfer portal player in the country, Ruben Chinyelu. The Florida Gators, led by the best 3-and-D wing in the country. I don't care if it's true. I'm saying it. The Florida Gators, led by the best football player to ever pick up a basketball in Elijah Martin. The Florida Gators, led by the comeback story of the year in Micah Hanlogden. The Florida Gators, by the best bench guard on the planet in Denzel Aberdeen. The Florida Gators, led by America's sixth man, Thomas Houck. The Florida Gators, led by the best analytically driven coach. The Florida Gators, led by the best SEC coach in the country, Todd Golden, are headed to the Final Four. And my God, does it feel good? Does it feel good to be back in the Final Four for the Florida Gators for the first time in over a decade? They're back. They are. They're back. 5-point lead over Texas Tech. The Florida Gators are going to the Final Four. Knock, knock. Who's there? It's the Florida Gators, ready to put belt to ass in the Final Four. It doesn't matter who they run up against. I'm taking these Gators. All right? I'm slamming the crap out of this book on my desk because we're excited. They're here. They're back. The Florida Gators headed to the Final Four. And guess what? We got the Johnny Walker Black. I just spilled a little bit of it, but it doesn't matter because we're celebrating a big W. The Florida Gators are moving on, and we're going to celebrate that. Oh, I almost said a word that would probably get me fired. I almost said a word that would probably get me fired. Luckily, I didn't. But we're going to talk about this tremendous comeback, this incredible victory, this monumental moment where the Florida Gators came back from a game in which there was what? Let me just double check the numbers because I want ESPN to know how damn wrong they were about this one. I want them to know that late in the game, there was one point with where is it? Let me get the percentage up here. Oh man, I love it. I love it. I love it. There was one point in the game late in the fourth quarter with 3 minutes left. Fourth quarter, second half with 3 minutes left. Texas Tech, according to ESPN, had a 94.4% chance of winning. A 94.4% chance of winning. And guess what? Which, by the way, for those that are doing quick math, that means the Florida Gators had a 5.6% chance of winning. And you know what happened? Oop, I was busting my ass. You know what happened? The Florida Gators stayed hot and came back to win this game.
Duke, wow, defeating Alabama, heading to the Final Four.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils.
What a performance it was for Duke, man. Fired up for you that you got a chance to be there in the building, and a 20-point victory. Duke's going to the Final Four for the first time under John Shire.
Yeah, you know, JJ, it was kind of crazy because this team came so close a year ago, right? They got to the Elite Eight. They're playing NC State, a team that had beaten them in the ACC tournament and you're thinking, okay, they're going to get some revenge on the Wolfpack, and they're going to punch through, and they're going to get to the Final Four, and it didn't happen. But it happened here tonight, probably against a more difficult opponent in Alabama, who came in as the top scoring offense in the country, averaging, I think, just over 90 points per game. They put up 113 in the Sweet 16 against BYU, and Duke holds them to 65 here in this Elite Eight. They shot 35% from the floor after making 25 three-pointers against BYU. They just go 8 of 32 against this Duke defense. And I don't think it was a perfect game for Duke, to be honest with you. I think they can play better, but the way they play defense, man, this team is something special. Even when they don't have their best offensive performance, and I say that with them still shooting over 50% from the field, they can lock you down from the field with their defense. So this is a special night for Duke. They're going to the Final Four. They're going to San Antonio. They'll find out tomorrow evening who they're going to play, whether it's going to be Houston, perhaps a rematch from last year in the Sweet 16 if Duke's able to win that game, or if Houston's able to win that game, or they'll play Tennessee, the team that knocked them out 2 years ago. So regardless of who they're going to play, or 2 years ago. 2 years ago. That's right. Yeah, sometimes it all just meshes together. But
it's late in the night, man.
You're right, but it could be a type of a game, revenge for one side or the other, regardless of who they play.
Okay, so it's a big win for the Blue Devils. And again, Final Fours are not guaranteed every single year, although at a program like Duke, you're more likely to end up there than at other places, thanks to what Mike Krzyzewski was able to build, and John Shire certainly carrying that out here as Duke's basketball head coach. In this game in particular, though, talking to the Alabama offense, they've got an All-American on the other side. His name is Mark Sears. He had 10 three-pointers against BYU. He scored 34 points. He finishes 2 of 12 from the floor, and Duke made it incredibly difficult for him to ever get comfortable at all. Late in the game, you're seeing him start to use his off arm, trying to create some separation. He's being called for offensive fouls. I mean, really just felt like time after time after time, the length of Duke's guards started to get into Mark Sears' head a little bit.
Not only the length of their guards, but the way they switch. And I think Kaman Malawash, this might have been his best game as a Duke player, given the stakes and given what was at hand. And the way he was able to switch on to many different players throughout the game, I thought was key for this Duke team. And then, like you mentioned, Tyrese Proctor is a bigger guard. Sion James, obviously, maybe isn't the tallest or lengthiest guy in the world, but he's just so strong and so physical, it's tough to get around him. I thought Duke did a great job on him. I thought their defensive game plan was great. And kind of as we mentioned on your episode that was posted on Friday morning after we were talking Thursday night about the Sweet 16, you didn't feel like Alabama was going to make 25 three-pointers again. If you had a bet, you were going to bet against that just because of they just broke an NCAA tournament record. What are the odds they're going to do it again? And obviously that was not the case. Duke held them to 8 of 32 from three-point range. In fact, they only made 23 field goals in this game, and 25 three-pointers. That's just the difference, right? 25 three-pointers a game ago, 23 total field goals in this game. But the Duke defense was something special.
Totally different. I mean, it was focused right from the get-go. Duke never trailed in this game. It was a wire-to-wire victory. And really, once we got into that second half and Duke was able to push it out to an 11-point lead right before the break, Alabama got a layup to go at the buzzer, so we had a 9-point margin there at the break. It never got closer than 6 points the entire second half. There was a stretch there late where Alabama went 5 minutes scoreless without even able to get a shot to go. I thought there was a really big moment where Mark Sears missed the front end of a 1-and-1 after a kind of questionable foul call, but maybe if he sees that one go down and through some of the shots he started to attempt there towards the end, any great shooter, you see it go through once, that could be a difference there. But throughout the night, from the jump, like you talked about, it felt like Duke's effort was remarkable on the defensive end and really trying to push them away. Early on, a player like Aiden Sherrill, who's not the number one three-point shooter that you're thinking about for Alabama, knocked down 2 of them. And it was like, all right, this is really serious. We've got to make sure we get out and contest these jumpers and even not let them take as many as they did the other night. And that's what Duke was able to do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And also I want to go back to kind of what you talked about in that second half where Alabama did get within 6 a couple of times, and it felt like they had some momentum. Cooper Flagg got stuffed by Grant Nelson, trying to put the hammer down and end this game early.
I wish we could delete that from the internet, man. I wish that would never have happened.
It happens to all time hoopers out there. You just got to tip your cap. Sometimes you get got. But, I think Alabama came down and hit a 3. I think it was Sears' only 3 of the game. And then a couple possessions later, they get an N1. that was kind of the point where you're looking around and you're thinking, like, Duke has been by far the better team. Duke has by far played better. But all of a sudden, it's a 7, 8, 6-point game, and you're like, all right, like, Alabama's right in this game. But every time the Crimson Tide made a push, every time they tried to get a little bit close, Duke was there with a response. And I think that's just shows the championship mentality of this team. And you have to give them credit because nobody besides Tyrese Proctor has been in this situation before. And I think Tyrese Proctor, I'm sure we'll get into it in your second or third segment, but I'll just preface it with this. He deserves a lot of credit, man.
Yeah.
Because he probably played the worst game of his career in the Elite Eight last year against NC State. He was 0 for 9, 0 of 5 from 3, just did not have it at all. And then tonight what he does, goes 7 of 10 from the field, finishes with 17 points, kind of hits the dagger with about a minute to go on the wing 3, hit a couple of threes, rebounded, dished it out, was a playmaker. We already talked about his defense. A hat tip to him because this was kind of a redemption night for him after how he played a year ago in the Elite Eight against NC State.
And that's something John Trotter talked about a good bit this week. They were bringing it up on the television broadcast of the game. You know, Duke 13 minutes away from a Final Four last year. It was kind of the 13-minute mark in that game with NC State in the second half where the Wolfpack took the lead and Duke was never able to get it back. They played 13 more minutes of basketball here this year once they got to that big stage in the Elite Eight. And down the stretch, it really was somebody like Tyrese Proctor who really took them over the edge there. Con Knippel, a team-high 21 points in the contest for the Blue Devils. I thought he was absolutely excellent for Duke as well when they needed somebody to be tough and to get the job done.
So Con Knippel is such an interesting player, right? Because he is a great shooter. He can put it on the deck. In the first half, you saw a couple of spin moves that I'm not going to say you haven't seen all season, but when you look at him, you don't think he has that in his bag, and he showed it. But the other part is he does a lot of the dirty work for this team. Yes, we talk about Sion James and how tough he is, and he'll do anything to help the team win. But second half, game's kind of in hand already, and it's Con Knippel who's still diving on the floor for loose balls. I think Con Knippel, and especially with Cooper Flagg not having the best shooting night that he can have, going just 6 for 16, I thought Con Knippel was absolutely awesome. And you can't call him an unsung hero, but he was the key in this win tonight for Duke.
Duke is heading to the Final Four. Truly special what they were able to accomplish there at the Prudential Center.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. You can also check out daily Major League Baseball lines all season long. The LA Angels travel to our nation's heartland to face the St. Louis Cardinals. The Cardinals have not lost yet, but have Miles Michaelis on the mound. Michaelis struggled mightily last year. The Angels feel like an interesting underdog pick, plus 112. So visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoop action all tournament long.
Houston gets speed, not offensively, on the defensive side of the ball. EJ Speed signs with Houston. EJ Speed to Houston. He finished with 142 tackles last year, 12th in the NFL, 7 tackles for losses, 5 pass deflections, 93 solo tackles, most in his career, 3rd in the league. He also has 6 forced fumbles in his career. Now, this is a guy that plays good downhill. One of his bad traits, missed tackle rate is extremely high, among the league leaders in missed tackles in 2024, which led to some big plays for the opponents. Nearly 40 missed tackles in the last 2 seasons. And the other bad trait being a liability in pass coverage. 450 yards allowed last year, nearly 10 yards per catch, 79 completion percentage. In 2024, he allowed the most yards and was second in completions allowed compared to Texas linebacker Aziz and Henry T, and also allowed more yak yards. 51 defensive stops in 2024. Big Sarge, how do you feel about EJ Speed now being added to Houston for a 1-year deal worth up to $5 million?
What? Hey, John, you ever seen the movie Life?
I have.
You remember when they were all reading, Eddie Murphy was the only one that could read?
Yeah.
And he was reading the letters, and he was like, your mama died, your daddy died, the dog done died. Anybody else want me to read for?
No.
John, that's how I feel with you just reading all that stuff that you just read about EJ Speed. I'm like, what? And I'm sitting here thinking, okay. I was like, this can't be the same EJ Speed that I've watched play over the last couple of years alongside Zaire Franklin up with the Indianapolis Colts. Like, this the same, John, all those stats you just read, because I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't know those stats until the Houston Texans got them. And I don't think that it was, really my job to know all of that except what he was good at and what he wasn't good at 2 times a year when the Houston Texans played against them, one in Indianapolis, once at home. But John, if you don't mind, do you still have those stats?
I do.
Could you please read the missed tackles and the pass coverage stats again?
Nearly 40 missed tackles in the last 2 seasons, a 79 completion percentage allowed, 450 yards allowed, 10 yards per catch in 2024, which would have placed him first on this team, yards allowed at the linebacker position, second on this team in terms of completions allowed, if he was a Houston Texan.
And he had 142 tackles last season, right?
142, 93 solos.
So basically, either the Houston Texans picked up Zach Speed or EJ Cunningham. And for those of you all who don't know what I'm referencing, that's Zach Cunningham, that the former linebacker that used to be here, right? I mean,
that's a great, that's a great comparison.
Like he was a tackling machine. But other than that, I mean, and don't get me wrong, with what DeMeco has built here and what he's continued to build here as far as that swarm mentality, Zach Cunningham would have fit right in. But so, and I guess that I'm one of those ones, John, that when I look at the game, like I said, I have not watched all of his games. I've only watched him play against the Houston Texans, and I'm saying to myself, I like him. And, I watched a couple of more games, don't get me wrong. But, John, this is a tough one, man. I'm going to be honest with you. It's a tough one because are you bringing him in for just veteran presence? Are you bringing him in for a depth piece? Like, and don't get me wrong, because Azeez missed a lot of time last year. Henry missed a lot of time. I mean, Henry missed 2 games, I think, last year. Azeez missed 6, if I'm not mistaken. Christian Harris missed like 14. I mean, and so I can understand bringing him in and having that, they're needing that backup piece, somebody who can play the position, because you look at a player like Neville Hewitt, who had to step in a lot last season and play. Neville Hewitt didn't play bad. It was just sometimes it seemed like the game may have, because of his unfamiliarity and lack of presence on the field as far as snaps is concerned during a regular game. Sometimes it was okay, because I remember doing his New York Jets days, Neville Hewitt was pretty good, but when you don't, continuously get those reps on the field. So, John, I guess that you're just bringing in EJ Speed and to have a backup piece, to have another set of eyes in that locker room, and in the linebacker room. But he's also a guy that has that mentality, that dog mentality in him that, because a lot of people, besides us, John, there isn't a lot of people that's ever heard of Tarleton State, where he came out of, where he went to school at.
Yeah.
And so, shout out to my fair brother Dietrich. That's the only reason I know about Tarleton. But John, you look at it and you come from a small school like that, you overcome all that adversity and you get to where you are as far as being in the NFL. So I guess it's just that mentality, and John is going to put it to the test of what you said about DeMeco being able to help some of these guys, take their game to the next level. He's one of those guys. I'm pretty sure that DeMeco's seen those stats, and then he probably just like, yeah, I'm good. I'm going with what my eyes say. That's what he told me last year during training camp when I asked him about Jeff Okudah, and I can't remember the other the other cornerback that they had brought in.
CJ Henderson.
Yeah, and I said, what did you see from them in order for, to bring him here? And he was like, I look at it from my own eyes. I look at things with my own eyes. I don't take up other people's vision. So maybe he has a plan in place for that, John. But outside of that, I honestly and truly do not know.
I try to make sense of what the Houston Texans do, just so whenever I reference something later on to criticize it, I have a reference to go back and say, well, maybe this is what they were trying to do. And this move really does remind me of bringing in Devin White last year.
Yeah.
And looking at replacing him, right? And that was a late move that Houston made with Devin White to bring in some depth And at times, Houston was able to use Devin White to, attack the defense, to really get after the quarterback and cause pressure. Speed is a pretty good downhill linebacker who reads and reacts to the run very well. I also see D'Amico and Matt Burke utilizing him on third downs. With blitz calls, again, what they were able to do with Devin White. Devin White had about 15 blitzes last year. You look at what EJ Speed in his blitz amount last year, I think it was north of 50. And so just utilizing him in different ways to create pressure. But I don't see him coming in jeopardizing Henry T for a starting role. No. It's a 1-year deal. It's $5 million. So I feel the same way. I feel the same way about him like I do about Trent Brown right now. Competition at the spot, can earn more snaps, bigger role over current Texans youth if they have a great camp. And I think that's what EJ Speed is, a very flexible contract. You can move on from it. If he doesn't work out, we've seen Nick Caserio do that before with 1-year contracts. And ultimately, it does give Houston a special teamer. He came into the league, made his way in the league playing special teams. So look, you look out for Frank Ross in that area. Losing Neville Hewitt, that matters. Yeah. You know how much Neville Hewitt mattered for the special teams unit. And then also, again, he is a vet. You're able to use his athleticism to maybe drop a linebacker back and shoot him down to create that pressure on maybe a 2nd and 8 or a 3rd and 5 passing situation, because Houston want to maybe make sure that they have guys on the back end that can cover well. That's not his strong suit. He doesn't cover well. And so this defense, especially with Matt Burke and D'Amico Ryans, calling the plays, they find ways to get guys in the best situation to succeed. EJ Speed has been successful in the NFL. This is just a guy that I think can come in and maybe push, but not take over any of these starting spots in Azeez and Henry T.
I wonder if bringing him in, like I said, I don't think they have re-signed or brought Neville Hewitt back, and so making him a depth piece on that. But I wonder if that means that they've seen the improvement on Jake Hansen, because they did bring him back on a 1-year deal. They did see the improvement that he made during the limited time that he was able to play, but he's very valuable on the special teams. But John, I'm also wondering, are they still not fully sold on Jamal Hill? Are they fully not sold on Jamal Hill, who, technically has only played the linebacker position for 2 years? Coming out of Oregon, he switched from safety to linebacker his last year at Oregon, and then when the Texans drafted him, they drafted him, as a linebacker in that rookie position last year. Got hurt, and so he missed the remainder of the season. But I wonder if bringing him in is also giving a player like Jamal Hill another year to develop, another year to learn the game, another year to get learning the linebacker position under his belt.
Yeah, could be. And again, I think, and what we'll talk about when we come back, I think that this is Houston doing a good job of, making sure that if they fall, it ain't too hard, right? And I also want to clarify, EJ Speed blitzed the quarterback 43 times last year compared to Devin White's 13 times last year. Devin White was featured in 7 games for the Houston Texans and started in 1 of those games.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. You can also check out daily Major League Baseball lines all season long. The LA Angels travel to our nation's heartland to face the St. Louis Cardinals. The Cardinals have not lost yet, but have Miles Michaelis on the mound. Michaelis struggled mightily last year. The Angels feel like an interesting underdog pick, plus 112. So visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoop action all tournament long.
The Timberwolves win over the Pistons. We could say that they won the fight.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast.
It is a victory Monday after, I know it's a shorthanded Pistons team, but it was an impressive Timberwolves win. We'll talk about why. Of course, the response to the fight, tied for the most ejections in like 10 years in the NBA. An exciting game on Sunday. And the Wolves actually, I was impressed with the way they played, the way they responded in a physical battle a number of guys stepping up for what ended up being a shorthanded Timberwolves rotation, at least. And a lot to get into in this one. A lot of impressive individual performances, some overall good stick-to-itiveness, and again, responsiveness from the Wolves. Plenty to talk about in the wake of this one. A big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also, of course, watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And a reminder about the newsletter, you can subscribe at LockedOnDaily.com. It's one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free right now at LockedOnDaily.com. All right, so the Wolves came into this game after winning on Friday night against the Phoenix Suns, blowing out Phoenix once again, and winning that season series. This short 2-game homestand. The Timberwolves, of course, every win counts the same, but of course it seems like it counts more now because there's only 7 games left on the schedule after this one. So they all matter. And the Wolves, after beating Phoenix on Friday night, came back against Detroit and started flat. They were down early in this game by double figures. They were down 14 at the end of the first quarter. They were down 16 in the first half. And for whatever reason, Malik Beasley decided it would be a good idea to kind of, do what Malik Beasley does, which is play the villain. And Timberwolves fans saw him do this with Minnesota. When they would go back to Denver, we saw him do it when he was with the Utah Jazz against the Wolves. And we know that that's what Malik Beasley is all about. That's fine. Whatever gets you going as a player, fine. Use whatever motivation, do the Aaron Rodgers thing, whatever. Have a chip on your shoulder. I get it. But he was so concerned with shouting about how Jalen Clark couldn't guard him. And then you had Isaiah Stewart taking exception to Dante DiVincenzo, I guess a little shove in the back. Maybe I think Stewart shot the ball and DiVincenzo yelled something at him. It was pretty minor, but Stewart gets a technical after standing over DiVincenzo in an open floor, a loose ball situation. And then Nas got upset about a foul from the Pistons. It was, I think it was on Ronald Holland. It actually wasn't that bad of a foul. I don't know why Nas was so upset. Everybody was just at an 11 at this point already. And Nas gets in his face. And of course, I'm not going to break the whole fight down, but DiVincenzo, steps in between and gives Holland a shove. And then he and Holland and of course, Isaiah Stewart, because why not? And they end up in the crowd, and Marcus Sasser from the Pistons is also ejected. And then both Nas and DiVincenzo are ejected. I would expect, I'm just guessing, I don't know. I don't think Nas will be suspended. DiVincenzo might be because he kind of aggressively put an elbow to the throat of Holland. And I mean, Holland actually took DiVincenzo or tried to take him to the ground in the crowd. So I think he probably gets a multi-game suspension. DiVincenzo, maybe one. I don't know. And then the craziest thing is maybe Pablo Prigioni getting into it with the Pistons staff, coaching staff. That was crazy. But the point, without breaking the whole fight down, the Pistons, I should point out, Pistons, normally I don't do the here's what people are saying on Twitter, but people are getting so upset about the Wolves trolling Malik Beasley at the end of the game with the shimmy thing. They're not doing it because they beat a shorthanded Pistons team. Obviously Cade Cunningham's out. Tobias Harris missed the game too. I get it. They're shorthanded. They're not doing it because they beat a shorthanded Pistons team by 19. They're doing it because Malik Beasley was trying to troll the Timberwolves when in the first half of this game. And what? Because he's one of the best catch and shoot 3-point shooters in the NBA. Fine. I'd love to see Malik Beasley score more than, 3 buckets a game, not using pin downs. How else is Malik Beasley scoring? So it's more, it was the troll after the troll from Malik Beasley. And then the fact that the Pistons acted like they wanted the smoke of coming into Target Center and doing that, and then completely falling apart after the Timberwolves kind of literally punched back, right? The Wolves, and this is what's so impressive. As an actual takeaway from this game, this is the type of fight that Timberwolves have not shown hardly at all this season, and especially on their home floor. I mean, Minnesota defended their home court. They showed fight at home, kind of literally, really. They protected their home court in a way that they have not done all season. They got the crowd into it. They showed. And I'm not saying that they haven't cared, but sometimes they haven't shown that they care. And well, obviously you don't want to fight ever to spill into the crowd, and you don't ever really want to fight this type of a thing. It wasn't a real fight. There were no real punches thrown. This sort of like scuffle, it's a little reminiscent of the Chris Finch ejection in Phoenix that kind of got the Wolves rolling in the first place back in January when they were really struggling. And I don't know that this is like another catalyst of sorts as the Wolves go back out on the road against Denver on Tuesday. But to do this sort of thing at home in front of the home fans, to get them involved, it really, I mean, it led to a win in this game. And I think it can galvanize the team. It can also show the fans in Minnesota, look, hey, we do have fight in us. We do care. It may have taken it till late March to like really get there, but we're not going to be an easy out in the playoffs. We're going to defend our home floor. We're going to defend each other, or we're going to defend our teammates. And, you know, and as a reminder, like the Pistons aren't bad. They actually have the exact same record coming into the game as the Timberwolves. I know they were missing Cunningham. I know they were missing Tobias Harris. Fine. The Wolves were favored by, I think, 7.5 or something coming in. But given the fact the Wolves came out flat and they were down 16, and this is how they punched back. And it started with something that looked a lot like last year. The defensive intensity. And I would credit Jaden McDaniels, actually, first and foremost. I know he got into early foul trouble, but he kind of started it. And then DiVincenzo, when he got into it with Isaiah Stewart, was like, all right, if this is what we're doing, I'm doing it. Like, I'm in. I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to fight through every screen. I'm going to get low in a stance. I'm going to grab off the ball. I'm going to get away with whatever I can get away with and compete. The compete level is going to be at its absolute greatest. And then Nickeil Alexander-Walker, same thing. Got down in a stance as he does. Looked like he was guarding Jamal Murray across the timeline, picking him up 3/4 court in the playoffs last year. That's how he was guarding in this game. And it's not realistic. It just isn't for a team to do this for 82 games. They did it for probably 70+ games last year. That's how they defended. We haven't seen it much this year. We saw it in this game. And this was before the actual like ejections and stuff. This was like before and slightly after the Isaiah Stewart, the initial technical, the dust up. It's not really a dust up. The blow by between Stewart and DiVincenzo, and then the standover Stewart over DiVincenzo. Around that kind of those festivities in the early second quarter, that's where this defensive grittiness set in for the Wolves. And they carried it forward on the other side of the altercation. I mean, when all this happened in the second quarter, the Wolves were, I believe they were still down double figures. Yeah, they were down 10 when all this happened, 39-29. And it was right before this that the Wolves started defending the way that we were accustomed to seeing last year, and we've seen so seldom this year, especially at Target Center. And that's what we saw. We saw the Wolves get into the jerseys of the Pistons and, again, kind of literally, took the fight to them.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. You can also check out daily Major League Baseball lines all season long. The LA Angels travel to our nation's heartland to face the St. Louis Cardinals. The Cardinals have not lost yet, but have Miles Mikolas on the mound. Mikolas struggled mightily last year. The Angels feel like an interesting underdog pick, plus 112. So visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoop action all tournament long.
The Cavs wrap up the month of March with a nice win over the LA Clippers.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
The Cleveland Cavaliers beat the LA Clippers on Sunday, 127-122. And I thought that this was a really good sign from this team. This is the end of a really difficult stretch in the schedule. If you listen to the show every day, you know where I stand on this, that I think that the schedule has had a really big impact on how the Cavs have played lately. They don't want to use that as an excuse, but I do think that they've admitted that it's at least part of the equation. It's not the whole thing, but it's part of the thing. And I thought on Sunday, they looked like a team that was much more focused than they've been in a lot of the games that they've played this month. I thought that they competed at a higher level than they had in some of the other games that they've played this month. I thought that this was one of the more complete games that the Cavs have played this month. And truthfully, the only reason I thought this game was as close as it was is one, the Cavs did a poor job of closing out quarters in this game, which has been a bit of a recurring theme for them. And two, give credit where it's due. I thought Norm Powell for the Clippers was absolutely fantastic in this game. And I thought Chris Dunn, who the Cavs were more than content to leave wide open, hit a few shots. And that is why that this game was a 5-point Cavs win instead of a 15 to 20 point Cavs win. But ultimately, I thought we saw a lot of really good things from the Cavs today. I thought Donovan Mitchell was fantastic. I thought Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley both really stepped up after what happened when the Cavs played the Clippers in LA a couple of weeks ago. And this is a really nice win. The Clippers, yes, Kawhi Leonard didn't play. And of course, that factors into this a little bit. But overall, the Clippers have been playing great basketball lately. And the Cavs, I thought, probably toyed with them a little bit too much, where they led by as many as 18 early. They'd let LA back into the game. They led by, I believe it was 14 or 15 or 16, somewhere in that neighborhood in the second half, and they let LA back in the game. They failed to close the door completely as early as they could have in this game. But overall, I think there's a lot to be happy about. And I think a lot of that has to do with what the Cavs looked like offensively in this game, because I think at times during this stretch of below standard basketball, I think is a fair thing to say, where the Cavs have not played up to their standards. I think during this stretch, one of the things that has suffered a little bit has been the ball movement, where the ball maybe hasn't moved side to side as much, or the Cavs haven't generated great shots through the flow of the offense, a lot of what they can do. And, I think this is a common thing that's not a Cavs specific thing. But I do think when teams are at their best, the ball is moving. And when teams are at their worst, the ball can get kind of sticky. And I thought that this was sort of a pretty good example of what happened on Friday night in Detroit against the Pistons, where the Cavs tied their season low in assists with 16. And then on Sunday against the Clippers, a team that I think is probably better than Detroit, the Cavs go out and have 33 assists and just look so much better offensively. They had 33 assists on 47 made baskets. Like, that is absolutely a good place to be. They didn't shoot the basketball from 3-point range as well as you would expect them to. They were 33% there, which is below what their average is. And they've not been a good shooting team in the month of March. But I also think that serves as a reminder in a game like this, where the Cavs look pretty good, but they were not clicking on all cylinders. Like, this was so far away from what the peak version of the Cavs is, but the non-peak version of the Cavs is still more than good enough to beat almost every team in the league. Like, could they beat Boston in a 7-game series playing the way they did on Sunday? No. Could they beat OKC playing the way they did on Sunday? No. But can they beat just about every other team in the NBA playing the way they did on Sunday? Yes, they can, because that's how good the Cavs are. And I don't think that this is anything close to what we're going to see in the postseason. But I think what we are at now, and this was a big talking point after the game, is now it's time to go. And the Cavs, I don't want to say they screwed around during the month of March, because that's not true. Did they have the same level of focus that is needed for the postseason? No. Did they execute as well as they will need to execute when the postseason arrives during this month? No. Was this their worst month of the season? Probably. Is that okay? Yes. But now is when I think we start to see that page get turned a little bit, to where now that just brutal month of March, where they have had, I think this is 18 games in a row, the end of an 18-game stretch where they don't have back-to-back games in a single city, Cleveland or otherwise. And now they're going to be rested. They have a couple of days off, going to talk about coming up in a little bit exactly what that could mean for this team. For the first time in a while, they have a couple of days off. And now I think is when that focus is going to really start to ramp up and lock in. And that's not to say they're going to have it in all 7 of the remaining games, because I don't think that's going to be expected. I think they will, before the end of the regular season, I think they will clinch the top seed in the Eastern Conference. I mean, would it shock me if because now their magic number is down to 4. A combination of 4 wins and Boston losses will give them the number 1 seed. Would it shock me if the Cavs win their next 4 games against the New York Knicks, San Antonio Spurs, Sacramento Kings, and Chicago Bulls and clinch the top seed in the East? No, that would not be a stunning thing to me. And then once that happens, I don't want to say that they're going to take their foot off the gas, but I think that you probably see Donovan Mitchell get another rest game, Darius Garland get another rest game, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen's the only one that's not going to do that because he wants to play in all 82. So I think we'll get to that point. But until then, I think you're going to see a very locked in version of the Cavs. And I think that what we're going to start to see from this team is a little bit more of a, okay, the playoffs are here. It's time to focus up. It's time to go. It's not that they haven't necessarily felt urgency lately, but I do think that a game like Sunday kind of reinforces what I've been saying on this podcast lately, is that there was no reason to panic because they played a bad stretch of basketball. These things happen. And Donovan Mitchell talked about this after the game. And I do want to talk specifically about the game that he had, because I think it was a very, very impressive, complete performance from him in this one on Sunday. But he talked after the game about a little bit about the circumstances that led to this, that the focus level maybe wasn't where it needed to be. And that, Kenny Atkinson told them before this game, kind of, I don't want to say snapped on them, but he maybe lit into them is the right way to go about this, and got the message across that it's time to focus up, that it's time to start taking this a little bit, maybe more seriously than this month has been. And it's time to really start getting ready for a deep postseason run. And I do think one of the keys to making a deep postseason run is taking care of your business. And I think that now we're going to start to see the Cavs take care of their business. And I do think that, maybe this month that we just went through is going to get a little bit overblown, where ultimately the Cavs didn't finish March with some bad record. They didn't play to their full potential, and they had a 4-game losing streak in there, but ultimately they lost 5 games in a month. Like, that's not a big deal in the big scheme of things. And the other thing that Donovan mentioned, and I think some of this has merit, is that if they would have had, say, if you would have changed the name of this month from March to November, it wouldn't have been a big deal. I think people would have been happy that the Cavs would have gone 11-5 in a month, which they just did, or 12-5, whatever their final record was. But because it's March, because it's close to the playoffs, I do think that there is a sense of, from some of the fan base, a little bit of a freak out. And I understand why, because you want the team to be playing its best basketball when it matters most. And I think that they are going to show moving forward here that they are ready for the postseason, that's what these next few games are going to serve as. They are truly going to serve as the Cavs getting ready for the postseason in a different way than what we have seen before. It's not to say that they're going to play their best basketball every night, because I just don't think that that's necessarily a possible thing. But I think that they're going to look, I think they're going to look like a different team on Wednesday night when they play the New York Knicks. That's the next game they have. I think they're going to look like a different team then. I think they're going to look like a much more focused group, probably even more focused than they did on Sunday against the Clippers. And I do think that this was the most focused they've looked probably since the game they played against Memphis. I think they're going to look like a well-rested team. I think the shooting is going to come back for them. Like, that is the thing that, even as they've looked good in some of these games, as they did on Sunday against the Clippers, as they did in Portland, I guess Utah, Utah's just so bad that it doesn't matter. But the 3-point shooting has not necessarily been the driver of their offensive success. They've been getting it done in other ways. And as I think they're going to get their legs back underneath them a little bit here, I think that is going to be a bigger, more significant part of the equation than what it has been during this stretch. They are a team that entered the month of March shooting around 39% from 3. Exiting in the month of March, they're not anywhere near that. They were a poor shooting team by their standards during this month. That is something that I do expect to change. I think Sunday is, and I've made mention a ton about what day, February 10th, because that was the day that DeAndre Hunter made his team debut for the Cavs, and they looked really good for a stretch after that. And then I don't know if you want to call it taking your foot off the gas or easing up or whatever, but they were not the team that we have seen all season for the last several weeks. And I think there are a variety of reasons as to why. But I think that we are going to look at Sunday, March 30th and say, okay, that's the day where maybe flipping the switch isn't the proper word. But I think that's going to be the day we look at and say, okay, the Cavs are okay. They're fine. What happened in March stays in March. They're going to be all right. They're going to turn the page, and the focus and everything that needs to be there for the postseason is going to be there for the postseason. I think that this is the game we're going to look at it because the Cavs played well enough. They toyed with a really good team. They only won by 5, but I don't think that even begins to tell just how dominant they were in this game against, yes, Kawhi Leonard didn't play, but the rest of that Clippers team is pretty good. And for Norm Powell to have the game that he had and that really be the only reason it was close, like I thought the Cavs did a great job on James Harden. I thought overall they did a great job in a lot of areas. And I think that is going to serve as a bit of a preview for what to expect moving forward.